Good morning. It is a new day with the S12. We have all of today, this weekend, to work on the car. At the end of the last video, we found a little problem. There's a water leak at the back of the engine. So the first task of the day is going to be dealing with that. Those of you who are familiar with SR swapped S chassis know that the coolant lines that run at the back of the engine are absolutely brutal to access. And if you've seen these swaps on S13s, you know it's bad. On S12s, it's worse. Right now, with the transmission mount in, the block is touching one side of the coolant hose, the firewall is touching the other. My plan is going to be to remove the transmission cross member and then jack the transmission farther, like beyond where it would normally rest. That way, hopefully I can tilt the engine forward and get access to those hoses. If not, it's going to mean an S14 water neck and bypassing the back. Hoping to not need to wait for parts and spend that money. See how it goes today. The transmission is now being held up by a jack stand. And this is all the additional space we got. I was able to get the two clamps out from in the back of the engine by just unscrewing them completely and then using needle nose pliers to pull them out. And I went for the replacement. This is what happened. Genius me, knowing these hoses were 3/4 inch, went and bought 3/4 inch clamps. 3/4 inch is the internal diameter, not the external. So these don't fit. It's going to be another run to Canadian Tire.
Your favorite place?
It is. I've managed to shimmy on the first clamp, getting it through from the hose over here that I put it onto and just slid it across. This is a lot more space now that the transmission's been jacked up, but it's really a nightmare working back there. To anyone doing an SR swap on an S12, I heard this advice and I didn't listen to it before I put the engine in my car. If you can, if your budget permits, get an S14 water neck, get an AN line to run the coolant return from the turbo. Dealing with this isn't worth it. So I have managed to put the hoses back together with new, much stronger clamps at the back of the engine. So I'm hoping that that's going to solve the water leak that we were dealing with last weekend, at the end of the weekend. Now, I try to complete tasks before I start new ones, and my previous task was to solve the coolant leak. I want to bleed the coolant system and let it run. I can't do that in the garage. So what I'm going to be doing is bolting the drive shaft halves together. I have an S13 front half of the drive shaft, S12 back half of the drive shaft. That way I can take this car and drive it down the driveway. This will be the first time the car moves under its own power since 2019. So I'm very excited, very nervous about this.
It's a long time.
It's a hell of a long time. So I'm really excited. I've got the last of the bolts that need to go onto the drive shaft. I'm going to need to push the car to get around to it. Yeah, that's all I got.
Nice.
Silly me, getting all ready to move the car for the first time in 4 years, all excited about it. Forgot to bleed the clutch slave cylinder. Bleed clutch slave. Add that to the list of ongoing tasks.
And press, release, press, release, press, release. All right, I think we're good.
Started off today trying to solve the coolant leak. That's just about ready for testing because bolting the drive shaft halves is done and bleeding the clutch slave is done. So we are going to start the car and drive it about a car length away. Watch me stall.
Nice. Don't hit my car.
Let's go! I drove my car! I drove my
You're adorable.
Oh, that was so cool. Oh God, that felt so good. So hopefully my work from this morning paid off. Gonna be looking for coolant leaks in that dreaded area behind the engine. At the same time, gonna let the water system rather. Sorry, I'm coming down from the high of having driven this car. Trying to let the water system burp a little bit. I'm sure there's gonna be air pockets in there after the major leak that we left this with last week. So where it's at right now. Moment of truth, did we solve the coolant leak?
That looks pretty freaking dry to me.
I don't see coolant.
Nice.
A $2 fix. I nearly bought a water neck, I nearly bought AN lines.
That's silly.
Oh, it's gonna wait for next year. Nailed it. While we wait for the coolant to do what the coolant's gonna do, what do I want to do next? Let's start working on fitting the intercooler piping. It's gonna be fun. It's been a few hours since the S12 finally moved under its own power, and I had been setting something aside as a little reward, a celebration for when the car finally moved. And that is this raspberry stout non-alcoholic beer. I don't drink, but this is an absolutely fantastic non-alcoholic stout, and I'm going to be enjoying that with some truffle popcorn that Val is preparing. It's going to be a good night.